When the trio entered the store, Harry got a funny feeling. There was something eye-catching about the shoppers, even though he rarely paid attention to them. It wasn't that he judged, but he felt like something was wrong. His gut instinct was right, but the cashier didn't know it. When they tried to pay, alarm bells rang in his head. Watching them carefully, he narrowed his eyes. It was the man from the couple who took the lead, despite the homeless man accompanying them. Why were they doing that? His experience with modest shopping was definitely different from this one. Most people would consider these items luxury items, but the man loaded them into the cart anyway. Observing the security camera, he watched the man place prawns, lobster, and other expensive items that weren't available all the time. There was something amiss. They were playing a game, but what was it? While ringing up other customers, he kept an eye on the trio. As they walked down the aisles, his eyes lingered on the monitor, not slowing as the carts were loaded. He noticed their route would put them right in front of his counter. By the minute, they were getting closer to the front door and his counter. Would they try to escape with the items? Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our upcoming stories. He knew something was wrong, but that didn't make sense. With an overloaded cart, they would never make it very far. Their motives were different. It didn't take long for the couple to get to his counter. There was no more stuff to add to the cart, which appeared stacked like a Jenga tower. While the homeless man stood on the other side of the cart, the couple stood on one side. When they paid, things took a turn for the worse. What were their chances of getting away with it? While Harry was scanning the items on the counter and unpacking their cart, he noticed something that made his hair stand on end. There was one item in particular that seemed out of place. There was just no sense in it. Before he could do anything else, he was interrupted by the man who said, "Hi there, we're buying all of this for a homeless man. Certainly, he deserves it." But Harry did not agree. Increasingly suspicious, Harry's eyes narrowed. Their decision to pay was the final nail in the coffin. They used a method that would make him weak at the knees and almost fall. It was clear to him what he needed to do. In order to do what he had to do, he reached under the counter. If they hadn't done that, they would have gotten away with it. Throughout his life, Harry Olsen lived in Pennsylvania. He studied television and film at night, pursuing his passion. One day, he dreamed of directing a film. However, his dream wouldn't pay the bills in the meantime. In fact, it had quite the opposite effect. As a student, he had to balance living expenses and school fees. To get to his job, he walked 5 blocks every day. As a cashier, he earned a modest living. Despite his lack of money, he needed every penny to survive. With over a year of experience at the company, Harry thought he had seen it all. In the past, he'd seen people try to shoplift whole turkeys on Thanksgiving. He'd seen a blind man buy carrots to help his blindness. However, the man had not seen everything. Soon enough, he would experience another odd interaction. However, this one would put him in a dangerous position. It started out like any other normal day. Harry woke up and saw that his shift started in an hour. He got out of bed and got ready for the day. He showered, brushed his teeth, and drank some coffee. Harry got to work just on time and quickly got behind the counter. He greeted his coworkers and got ready for another boring day. He didn't see his boss, but he wasn't surprised. Harry's boss was rarely seen in the front of the store. He would be in the back, or he wouldn't even be there, and rather out somewhere else. This meant that he was largely alone. His coworkers were generally tending to their own jobs, like taking stock or packing the shelves. That meant that at the front of the store, he had to deal with problems personally. Whenever there was a problem, he would have to solve it himself. He had no one else to rely on. Today would be no different. He snapped out of his daydream and looked at the prospective customers, but he immediately felt like something was off. There was a man and a woman, clearly a couple from the way they were holding hands when they walked through the door, but the third man looked ragged. He was clearly homeless, but why was he with them? Followed right behind them. Was he bothering them? Had he followed them in from the street? He had no idea. Harry didn't want to judge the homeless man too harshly. When the man from the couple turned around and spoke to him in a friendly manner, it was clear that they were together. But what was the arrangement? Harry decided to keep a closer eye on all of them as they made their way through the store. The couple started at the produce section. He watched them pile all sorts of fresh fruit and vegetables in the cart. He saw them gesture to the homeless man. Then it clicked. They must have been buying him groceries. His heart warmed, thinking that there were still good people in the world. But his elation would be short-lived. Harry was smiling at the prospect that one man wouldn't go hungry today because of the kindness of strangers. But the further they went, the more taken aback he was. He expected them to get the essentials for the homeless man, but they only started to make Harry doubt their intentions as they started packing things he didn't expect. Maybe they were also shopping for themselves. This didn't seem too weird. They could have just been people well off enough to shop for themselves and a man in need. But after watching the way they shop, he felt like he was wrong to think that they were good people. He felt like there was something wrong going on. Could he get to the bottom of it? It was as if the items were free. They didn't care what they got, just as long as they packed their cart full. But the real kicker would come when he noticed what was in their cart. He didn't want to judge, but he just felt like something was off. The cashier had no idea that his gut was right. Alarm bells would go off in his head when they tried to pay. His eyes narrowed as he watched them carefully. Even though the homeless man had accompanied them, he saw the man from the couple take the lead. What were they doing? And he watched on the security camera as the man put prawns, lobster, and other expensive items that the cashier only had every few months. Something didn't add up. What were they playing at? Harry noticed that the route they were taking would put them right by his counter. They were getting closer by the minute and would eventually be by the front door and his counter. Were they going to try and dash out with the items? That didn't make much sense, but he knew something was up. They'd never make it very far, burdened with an overloaded cart. No, they had other motives. Eventually, the couple made it to his counter, but things were about to take a turn for the worse when they decided to pay. Would they get away with it? Just as they started unpacking their cart onto the counter and Harry scanned the items, he noticed something that made his hair stand on end. One item in particular seemed out of place. Harry's eyes narrowed, more suspicious than ever. But the nail in the coffin was when they decided to pay. The method they used would have him weak at the knees and nearly falling over. He knew what he had to do. He reached under the counter and did what he had to. Otherwise, they would have gotten away with it. Harry noticed one of the items. If they really were all for a homeless man, then why would he need a pool cleaner? But then the man tried paying. That was what really set Harry off. They stepped forward and paid with a normal debit card, but that's when Harry finally realized why something felt off. The homeless man recognized him. He had a GoFundMe. Harry had seen the homeless man on a GoFundMe page. He asked the couple if they were paying using the money from that. They nodded but insisted the groceries were his, and they were using their card because he didn't have one. Harry had heard enough. He didn't believe them. It automatically dispatched a police officer to the store. The police arrived shortly after and detained the couple. They released them temporarily and launched an investigation. They were found to have been using the GoFundMe money they raised for the homeless man on themselves. But there was a happy ending. The homeless man, whose name was Eric Whitaker, ended up getting the remaining money. As for the couple, they had to pay a hefty fine and were sentenced to 5 years in prison on conspiracy charges.